What's up, everyone? Jason Gilbo here at JGilbo11, taking a look at some GPP bats for tonight's slate. Overall, 15-game slate. Not a couple of solid pitchers, but we do have a couple of really bad guys, aka Bronson Arroyo on the hill. But 15 games here, I mean, it's a good chance to kind of get some evened out ownership. I mean, we're going to still have some chalky teams and some chalky bats, but 15 games, I mean, it's one where you can spread ownership out quite a bit. You can get a little bit creative and go against the grain as well. So jumping right into it here, Chicago and New York, Luis Severino, Miguel Gonzalez. On the Chicago side of things, I mean, you look at Severino, a reverse splits pitcher. As far as right-handed bats go, I mean, I'm not particularly thrilled with these guys. Jose Abreu is off to his last year type first half start. I mean, he's hitting everything into the ground, not hitting the ball hard. I think for the most part, I mean, on a full game slate, you can do just a lot better than Jose Abreu right now, which, probably by my means, he's going to home run tonight. But, Todd Frazier, a guy I usually like to target against lefties more than I do against righties. And none of these names really excite me against a right-hander. So Chicago pretty much just a team that I'm avoiding tonight. On the Yankee side of things, I mean, Gonzalez pretty average against both sides of the plate. In that ballpark, it always presents a threat to get some home run potential. So, I mean, I don't mind, obviously, the one-offs here with some guys who are hitting the ball really well, like an Aaron Judge, like a Starling Castro. I mean, all reasonably priced. I mean, FanDuel, you get them at under 3K for the most part outside of Ellsbury and Headley. I do think these guys are all great tournament options. I don't know if I can go there in cash games. I know they're playing well, but there's far more teams that I like a little bit better. So the Yankees ownership should be definitely lower than last night, just given the fact that a lot of the righty or lefty mashers did most of the damage. So do keep that in mind. Moving on here, Red Sox and Blue Jays. Marcus Stroman versus Bryant Johnson. With the Sox side of things here, pretty cheap. I mean, you look at Stroman, doesn't have really any tremendous weakness. Pretty average against lefties. You might be able to sneak in a Benintendi on there on DraftKings, a pretty low ownership. I don't mind his price. He's only 3,400. Pedroia is only 36. Hanley's 4-1. A couple of those guys have decent success off Stroman. I wouldn't be opposed to it in a bad ballpark, or in a good ballpark, especially with Vegas really downing on the Sox. Should be able to get them at really low ownership, so they actually might be a contrarian move tonight. That front four is really where you're looking at. Maybe even a Mitch Moreland, who's obviously off to a great start, leads the league in doubles. I don't think it's actually a bad idea. And Marcus Stroman, I mean, we make it out for him to just be this untouchable right-hander, but he doesn't miss a ton of bats. Sure, he can feast on the below-average teams, but the Sox offense is still very good. I don't think they're a bad route to take tonight in tournaments. Toronto, they're going to get an average left-hander who could barely crack the majors. The lineup is still not that appealing. Kevin Pillar, Steve Pearce leading off. Steve Pearce is a lefty masher, but we haven't quite seen it this year. If you've rostered him throughout the first couple of days here of him facing lefties, you're getting a lot of 0-4s. Jose Bautista, Kendrys Morales. I like Morales. I think Morales is probably the most consistent bat Toronto has so far this season. Don't mind his price tag at all. Bautista, 3-3, Pearce 2-6 on FanDuel. I see the appeal here in GPPs. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be surprised anymore if they let me down, just because of how they've played. I mean, they've been a bottom 5 offense this season, so do not be surprised if they go out and throw out another dud. But in this type of matchup against Bryant Johnson, I think the potential is there. It's just a matter of if you're building multiple lineups, I still think there are better offenses that have been more consistent to target, even in GPPs. Baltimore, Cincinnati, next one here, Kevin Gausman versus Bronson Arroyo. Kevin Gausman, hard to really target. Adam Duvall might be the guy that I look to do it with. You just look at Gausman. If you want, the reverse splits, it is with Duvall. Other than that, he's really tough on lefties. Not saying Votto could get around on him, but I don't quite want to pay up for his price tag at 3.8 on FanDuel, 4.8 on DK. I'm much more inclined to take an Adam Duvall, who I just feel like is in a better spot. Boomer bust guy, but I mean, I like the FanDuel price tag at 3.2. I like the home run potential with Gossman being a reverse splits guy. That's about it for me. These guys are in a good ballpark, but I think Gossman comes out and does what he's supposed to do and has a solid start. On the Orioles side of things, I mean, looking at Bronson Arroyo, you can fire away 1 through 6 here, 1 through 7 if you want with scope. On FanDuel, all reasonably priced. We get a nice Chris Davis there at 3.3. Machado, Adam Jones chalk up as one of the best plays tonight. Trumbo, off to a little bit rocky start, but definitely don't mind him with Bronson Arroyo, who doesn't miss any bats. And I don't even mind going down to a Wellington Castillo or Jonathan Scope here. So in that ballpark, I mean, one of the highest run totals on the night. Baltimore's in a really good spot. You just look at Bronson Arroyo, and just say fire away. Detroit and Tampa, Michael Fulmer, not a guy that I'm looking to pick on tonight with any raise, even in GPPs. Miguel Cabrera, questionable for tonight's game. Matt Andres, not particularly loving any of these bats either in Tropicana. This one just basically a game that I'm avoiding as far as hitters go. Philadelphia and New York. Phillies bats against Zach Wheeler. Tough to really love. There might be some potential here maybe in the second time through the order with maybe some of these guys like a Michael Saunders or Michael Franco or Juba Herrera. But on a 15-game slate, I don't need to really go down that road. As far as the Mets go, you look at Eflin. I mean, this guy's, small sample size, but 388 went to lefties, 2.76 home runs per 9. With that being said, guys like Curtis Granderson, Asdrubal Cabrera, Jay Bruce, Neil Walker, Lucas Duda, all in play for me. I don't mind going that route. All very nicely priced on DraftKings. Only one over 4K is Yoenis Cespedes, and he's only 4.6. Jay Bruce 3.6, Walker 3.6, Duda 3.6, Cabrera 3.7. All at decent prices, even on FanDuel. I mean, we're getting them into the low to mid threes, but they definitely hold a lot better value over on DK. Definitely don't mind that. Nationals and Braves, Mike Foltynewicz versus Max Scherzer. Not looking to really use anyone here. Braves guys are priced down a little bit. I don't think Scherzer's going to have a complete clean outing. I think he still gives up a couple of runs, but once again, full slate. I don't need to go down that road attacking one of the best pitchers on the slate. Washington, obviously we've seen the Bryce Harper upside. We've seen the Daniel Murphy upside. Those are probably the only two bets that I'm considering from this team. Probably going to come in a little bit higher round, but not as high as in the past just because it is a full slate, and especially at their prices. But you look at lefties against Foltynewicz, 330 WOBA to lefties, 1.37 points per 9. So I'm definitely okay with using those guys, but that's about it for me. Milwaukee, Chicago, definitely a good GPP game for some upside. We'll start with this Brewers team. When Villar's not striking out, we get a lot of upside on the base pass in the home run department as well. Against lefties, I'm definitely okay with using him. I think he's a reasonable price on DK. I think FanDuel as well, 3.2. So, I definitely think he's one of those boomer bust guys you can fire away with. Anderson's a guy who, not going to miss any bats. I do think there is some potential for some Brewers one-offs like a Ryan Braun, who's at a decent price at 4.6 on DraftKings. FanDuel is 4.4, definitely up in price. But we also get guys like Domingo Santana, Hernan Perez that are always intriguing. Manny Piña's a guy that I'll be taking a look at tonight, righty catcher for Milwaukee, off to a terrific start. If you do need a value, only $2,700 on DraftKings. Really cheap there. Piña's only 2.3 on FanDuel. Crushing the ball, so I don't mind going that route tonight. So Brewers are intriguing, especially Wrigley. Looks like the winds are blown out a little bit, but nothing to the extreme. It looks like it's around 11 to 12 miles. So definitely in play, these Brewers bats against Anderson. Against Jimmy Nelson here, a couple of good starts to start the season. Overall, this is not a guy that I am still a big believer in. 5.20 FIP against lefties, 36% our contact rate. Struggled against both sides of the plate last year. The one thing, the Cubs pricing is still high on these guys. I think FanDuel, they're a little bit more in play with like Zobrist and Schwarber. Bryant, Rizzo, both over 4K. You look on DraftKings, though, I mean, the problem is, you know, you're still getting Schwarber at a mid to high price, Bryant, Rizzo as well. It's almost as if you're paying down a pitcher you can fit these Cubs in, especially when you get some other guys here at cheaper prices with kind of similar or even more upside. Cubs always kind of come in with a little bit higher ownership, but curious to see how that goes, just given the fact that they haven't really been that good to start the season. It's definitely not a bad spot here for the Cubs and to go after some of their top 5 guys. Indians in Minnesota, Phil Hughes versus Josh Tomlin. Good GPP game here. Cleveland should still come in as a chalky one against Phil Hughes, who's been bad against both sides of the plate since last season. And one of the good things is, I mean, you got Chisenhall still 3K, Jose Ramirez 4K on FanDuel, on DraftKings, and everyone else is in the mid 4s. You know, in that ballpark, definitely warms up as the summer goes on, and that makes target field much more playable for hitters. This time of the year, it's not tremendously cold, so I still give it a play. The wind is blowing out too. I don't mind attacking Phil Hughes. You look at against righties last year, 385 WOBA, obviously shortened season with the injury. Lefties, 385 WOBA, so I mean, you can really fire away here against both sides of the plate. I definitely don't mind going that route. And with all those guys, I mean, you know, the upside's really there. Santana, you can always play in the outfield, as Cleveland still get Encarnacion exposure if you want. Encarnacion should draw some lower ownership tonight, just because he's off to a weaker start. On the other side, I like Brian Dozier. I like Miguel Sano here. I think Max Kepler, Robbie Grossman are in play, but against Tomlin, reverse splits pitcher, 366 WOBA, 2.12 home runs per 9 going back to last year. He's really struggled to start the year. Definitely not a good arm. A guy we've always kind of expected to regress, just because he had a couple stretches last year where he did pitch well. And by well, I mean was getting lucky. So I think this Twins team, with the way they're hitting the ball, should have had a better outing last night from that offense. They let Salazar off the hook quite a bit. They had a lot of base runners but couldn't do anything with them. Tonight, I definitely think it's a good night to kind of buy in the Twins at some low ownership and get some GPP exposure. Angels, Astros, Joe Musgrove versus Ricky Nolasco. Angels side of things here, I'm not particularly thrilled. You know, once again, Trout, Pools, Calhoun, all worthy of a look, but on a 15-game slate, you can do better. Trout, I'm just never a big fan on full slates to pay up for his price tag, and I won't be tonight in tournaments. As far as Houston goes, the potential is there against Nolasco. You know, fairly average against both sides of the plate, 34% hard contact rate to lefties. Righties, 1.63 home runs per 9. You know, in play here, guys like Josh Reddick, Carlos Correa, if he's in the lineup, Carlos Beltran, Brian McCann, Jose Altuve. I don't mind taking some shots there with Houston. Decent ballpark. Once again, they're another one of those teams where, you know, we expected a lot of better production starting out the year. And, you know, we can also look and go, people are going to be off of them. People are going to go to the hotter offenses, which kind of lowers their ownership, especially on a 15-gamer. San Francisco, Kansas City next year. Matt Cain versus Jason Hamill. Not particularly in love with this game as far as hitters go, and that's surprising given the fact that the arms that are on this slate. Brandon Belt might be in play for me here as a cheap one, especially with Brandon Crawford. I don't mind there just because you look at Hamill. Against lefties, 342 WOBA since last year, 1.34 home runs per 9. I'm certainly okay with that. On the right side of things here with the Royals, Mike Moustakas is probably the only one I'll consider, and also Salvador Perez. You look at Kane, had a decent start there against the Diamondbacks at home. I don't think he's going to get absolutely shelled, but I do think, you know, he's still not going to have a clean outing. With that being said, I think it's much more of a one-off game. Pirates and Cardinals. The only guy that I will consider using here if he's in is Gregory Polanco. Outside of that, though, I just don't feel like there's anyone worth looking at. One of the lower scoring games on the night, one of the poor ballparks to hit in. That's about it for me. I mean, Carpenter could be in, could be out tonight. If he is, I think he'd be the only real viable option from the Cardinals side. Rangers and A's, the only potential guys you could possibly target here are the Rangers bats, not looking to attack you, Darvish. You look at Triggs, has been solid. Not anything spectacular, but I think Triggs is just one of those guys who's going to go out and kind of, be a stubborn pitcher and not allow a ton of production. But when you're going to get guys basically all under 4K outside of Rougned I think on DK they make more sense. FanDuel, they're priced decently. I mean, still threes, but they're not quite the same value they are over on DK. So I think I'd be looking more to use them there. Still that ballpark, but we saw that potential last night against Cotton. And you're still going to draw low ownership even after last night's game. Miami, Seattle, Giovanni Gallardo versus Wei Chen. Start with this Miami side. You look at Gallardo, absolutely awful against both sides of the plate last year. 353 WOBA allowed to lefties. Against righties, 352 WOBA. So, I mean, I'm okay with taking some one-offs here. A Yelich, Stanton's in play. Justin Bour's an intriguing GPP. Marcelo Ozuna still. I think they're much better priced over on DraftKings, though. I probably won't touch them on FanDuel at all because we're looking at Yelich 3.9, Stanton 4.2, Ozuna 3.3. Justin Bour 2.9. So I mean, those guys are in play. Bad ballpark, but obviously Miami hits in a bad ballpark for half their season. So I'm okay with taking some shots there. Once again, post 10 o'clock games, you definitely draw the lower ownership, so there is a good chance for that late night one-off to shoot you off the leaderboards. Seattle has a couple of right-handers that I'll be looking at against Chen, and that one guy is Nelson Cruz. Danny Valencia, man, I mean, this guy, I've been kind of waiting for him to come around against the lefty so far this year. Good chance for him tonight against Chen. Home run prone guy, 1.85 home runs per nine to right-handers going back to last year, 35% hard contact rate. I'm definitely okay with the Seattle righties here. Colorado, Los Angeles, what are the lower totals here? But I actually think this is a good GPP game to target for bats, especially a couple of the righties for for Colorado. I mean, Nolan Arenado 4.4 on DraftKings is a nice price tag for him. I mean, Ryu has not been good to start the season. He's been injured for most of the last year. I mean, he just still hasn't looked good. And I know Dodger Stadium plays bigger at night, but I think Arnail's a great play over on DK. FanDuel, I mean, 4.4. It's kind of tough to get behind that, but he's probably the only one-off that I'll look from there. Trevor Story is not a guy that I like to target on the road. Maybe a Mark Reynolds, DJ LeMahieu. I mean, you can get away with some sneaky guys like that. Definitely should be sub 10% ownership on both sides. DK, obviously, a little bit more for Arenado just because the price is obnoxiously cheap. On the Dodger side of things, I mean, Justin Turner, Yasiel Puig are in play, Logan Forsythe are in play. We saw Kike Hernandez hit a homer last night. This is a guy I just don't enjoy playing. But, I mean, if you're looking at GPPs and you want some cheaper ownership and you want his DK eligibility at shortstop, that's where he's probably more in play. But I don't mind attacking Freeland, league average lefty at best. And you look at the Dodgers, still projected for about 4.3, 4.4 as far as runs go. Arizona and San Diego, I don't want any real part of the Padres side of things. You might be able to get away with some cheaper guys as far as the outfield goes, like Margot Jankowski or even a Solarte or Schimpf. I don't know if I'll quite be paying up for Myers. Obviously one of the better Padres hitters, but I think first base, there's other options I'd rather go with. On the Diamondback side of things, look at Cozart here. Definitely an area where you can attack on both sides of the plate, and I think Peralta and Jake Lamb are in good spots. I like their pricing much more on DK. Jake Lamb's expensive on FanDuel, Peralta not. Pollock, Goldschmidt in play as well. I think I talked about this on the stacking pod where a late night stack of Arizona is not a bad option. I think the potential is there, given the fact that there is some stolen base potential, and given the fact that we saw last night they ran very quickly into the game and Grandal shut it down very quickly. But these guys are going to get on. Some power for the lefties there. Petco is a little bit neutral for lefty power. It does suck for righties for Pollock, Goldschmidt, but I don't mind them. Goldie's really the only expensive one there. So I think there's some potential. Also draw very low ownership as well. And that's going to wrap things up here. You can head on over to fantasycafe.com, check out our great tools and content.